Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be sharing with you swatches and first impressions of the James Charles X Morphe palette. So this is the outer unit carton of the palette and it is very similar in color with the Jaclyn Hill palette if you have that. And I really like the artwork on the palette, especially the makeup look that James has done. It's very beautiful, very artistic. So this is what it looks like, and obviously just like the Jaclyn Hill palette, at the back there is a message. And also the best part, I don't remember if the Jaclyn Hill palette had bubble wrap with it, because it was quite a while back that I picked it up, but this does have that, so it's nice. So this is the actual palette, and I'm very happy that it is black in color rather than the shade that was of the earlier Jaclyn Hill palette was the same color as the unit carton. So I enjoyed the fact that the James Charles palette is black. So the back of the palette has some additional information like the lifespan, which is 12 months, and also the fact that it's made in China like the rest of the Morphe products. Also, now when you open up the palette, on the upper half there's no mirror, but it does have his tagline, which is unleash your inner artist. And the names of the shadows, as usual, is on a plastic film, which I don't care for, but I'll stick it on the upper part. So this is what the palette looks like. I actually like the layout and the fact that they have made bigger pans for the crease colors, and there are fairly neutral colors on the top and the colorful colors on the bottom. So I really like that. So let's begin by live swatching row number 1 from the palette. And what I'll be doing is I have applied a thin layer of the eyeshadow primer from the brand The Balm Cosmetics, and I'll be finger swatching the 4 metallic shades first, and then I'll be blending the mattes with a blending brush. So the first metallic shade is called Ring Light, the second is called So Good, third is Halloween, and fourth is Wig. The only reason I swatch them with my fingers is that is usually how I apply them on my eyelids. Now starting with the mattes, the first matte shade is called Canvas, which is a very light shade and it barely shows up on my arm actually. Now this is the second shade, which is called 518. It is also one of the pressed pigments in the palette, and I think 2 layers gave fairly decent amount of pigmentation on my arm. The third shade is the shade Rusted, and the fourth matte shade from this row is called the shade Tea. So this is row number 1 of the Morphe X James Charles palette, and moving on to the second row, I'll again be swatching the metallics first and then I'll be swatching the mattes. So starting off with the shade Sister, which then will be, it's the shade Literally, and the third metallic in this row is the shade Shook, and the rest are mattes. So the first matte is Punch Me. It's an interesting shade. It's something like a camel shade, yellow. And then is the shade Mary, which is again a shade I haven't seen in too many palettes. It is a brown, but it is more towards a mauve toned brown. So I'm really intrigued. And the next shade is the shade You're Kidding, which James claims is an outright red, and I think it looks pretty good. So I'm pretty intrigued and I really want to see what looks I can create with this shade. The next shade is the shade Boutique, and the last one is called Penny. So that's row number 2 with 3 metallics and 5 mattes. Moving on to the middle row, which is 1 metallic shade and the rest of them are mattes. So starting off with a metallic shade, it's a champagne shade called as Face, and I think it will make a good face highlighter. Now moving on to the first matte, it's a white shade called Flashback, and this shade gave me some trouble. It took me quite a lot of building up for this shade to show up on my arm, but it did show up. So let's see if I'll be able to put this to use. The next shade is the shade Tune, which is meant to be a crease color, but it barely shows up on my arm. So I think the only use I'll make out of this is, diffusing some darker shade. Next is the shade Code James, which I think is one of the crease colors that I'll be getting a lot of use out of because it will look very nice on my skin tone. The next shade is called 10% Off. Again, a really good color and can be used to create a lot of looks. And the second to last is the shade No Beans, and the last one is the shade Spooky, which is a black, and it's a decent black for a palette which is not so expensive, so I think it's not bad. So these are the shades from the middle row of the palette. Now moving on to row number 4, this is where we begin with our colors. So starting off, I'll be swatching the shade Guac, which is a very pretty green. The next is the shade Hello, and the third shade is called Artistry, which is more of a topper apparently. So let's see how this will look when I start creating looks with it. Now the first matte is a yellow and it's called P, and the second round it did look really pretty, but I don't think it's showing up on camera, but in person that yellow did look really pretty. So the shade after that is a blue shade called Playground, and then there's another blue which is called Brother, and this shade is more of a pressed pigment. So there is a lot of noise going around behind about these pressed pigments, so I do think that I need to play around more with these shades to say something. So the shade after that is called Love That. It's a really beautiful pink color, and the last one is called Pinkity Drinkity, which is what James calls his coffee or something. So that again barely shows up on my arm, but the rest of the shades are really pretty. So these are the 3 shimmer shades and 5 mattes, of which the pink one, like the lightest one, barely is visible on my arm. So moving on to row number 5, we'll start off with the 2 metallic shades. The first one is Cape God and the second is Acapella, and these two are, I think, by far my favorite metallic shades from the palette. Now going on to the matte shades in this palette, the first one is Social Blade, which is a nice leafy green color, and the second one is the shade Daddy, and again a nice emerald green color. So I really think that I can play around with all these pigmented shades and create some very interesting looks. The next shade is a blue it's called Cola, and the one after that is called Escape, and again Escape is a pressed pigment, and there is a lot of discussion or buzz about these pigments and the fact that they whether they stain or not. So we'll see what happens. So the next matte is called Single, and the last one is Skip, and again there was a lot of noise about this pink saying that it stains and stuff. So when I did wash my hand off, I didn't have any problem because I used a oil based cleanser. But the thing with pink and other pigmented shadows is some of them have stained my eyelids in the past. So we'll see what happens with this one when I play around with it on my eyelids. So before I give my final thoughts, I just wanted to show you the palette up close after I swatched it. So the reason I did brush swatches is because I wanted to check if there was powder kick-up with the mattes, and there is some amount of kickback, but I'm okay with it because it's a lot less than kickback I have seen in a lot of other palettes like the Anastasia mattes do have a fair amount of powder kickback, so I can deal with that. But I just wanted to show it to you guys. And what I feel about this palette is I'm not completely put off by the palette because I don't have the old colorful 35p. So far I'm liking the palette, and we'll see how it performs on the eyes. soon. So you guys, make sure to follow me on all of my social media. I'll link all of that in the description. So follow me. I'll be creating looks using this palette, and do let me know if you like this kind of live swatches and if you want to see more of these. Thank you for watching.